Hello everybody again, it's Carpo. You know, I just can't get to work because I'm so obsessed with this book, but I was reading the introduction to the Tarot, and I'm going to continue with the second part, and I was explaining how there were three purposes used for preservation of ancient knowledge. There's the secret societies, the cultists, or the symbolic translations, and then the people themselves. So now it goes on to explain how each one of these fared and how each one of these failed. The secret societies. The school of Alexandria was the principal source from which the secret societies of the West arose. The majority of the initiates had taken refuge in the East, and quite recently, in 1884, the West discovered the existence of in India, and above all in Tibet, of an occult fraternity which possessed practically the ancient synthesis in its integrity. The Theosophite Society was founded with the object of uniting Western initiation with Oriental initiation. But we are less interested in the existence of this doctrine in the East than in the history of the development of the initiative societies in the West. The Gnostic sects, the Arabs, alchemists, Templars, Rosicrucians, and lastly the Freemasons, formed the Western chain in the transmission of occult science. A rapid glance over the doctrines of these associations is sufficient to prove that the present form of Freemasonry has almost entirely lost the meanings of the traditional symbols, which constitute the trust which it ought to have transmitted through the ages. The elaborate ceremonials of the ritual appear ridiculous to the vulgar common sense of a lawyer or grocer, the actual modern representatives of the profound doctrines of antiquity. We must, however, make some exceptions in favor of our great thinkers, like Reagan and a few others. In short, Freemasonry has lost the doctrine confided to it, and cannot by itself provide us with the synthetic law for which we are seeking. Reader's note. Listen to that part again. Okay, part 2. The cultists. The secret societies were to transmit in their symbolism the scientific side of primitive initiation. The religious sects were to develop the philosophical and metaphysical aspects of the doctrine. Every priest of an ancient creed was one of the initiates. That is to say, he knew perfectly well that only one religion existed, and that all the cultists merely served to translate this religion into the different nations according to their particular temperaments. I'm going to reread that part because it's very important. Every priest of an ancient creed was one of the initiates. That is to say, he knew perfectly well that only one religion existed, and that the cultists merely served to translate this religion to the different nations according to their particular temperaments. This fact led to one important result, namely, that a priest, no matter which of the gods he served, was received with honor in the temples of all the other gods, and was allowed to offer sacrifice to them. Yet this circumstance must not be supposed to imply any idea of polytheism. The Jewish high priest in Jerusalem received one of the initiates, Alexander the Great, into the temple, and led him to the Holy of Holies to offer sacrifice. Our religious disputes for the supremacy of one creed over another would have caused much amusement to one of the ancient initiate priests. They were unable to suppose that intelligent men could ignore the unity of all creeds in one fundamental religion. Sectarianism, chiefly sustained by two great creeds, equally blinded by their errors, the Christian and the Mussulman, was the cause of the total loss of secret doctrine, which gave key to synthetic unity. Still greater labor is required to rediscover synthesis in our Western religions than to find it in Freemasonry. The Jews alone possessed no longer the spirit, but the letter of their oral Kabbalistic traditions. The Bible, written in Hebrew, is marvelous from this point of view, for it contains all the occult traditions, although its true sense has never been revealed. Faber de Olivet commenced this prodigious work, but the ignorant descendants of the Inquisition at Rome have placed these studies on the list of those prohibited. Posterity will judge them. Yet every cultist has its tradition, its book, its Bible, which teaches those who know how to read them the unity of all creeds, in spite of the difference existing in the ritual or various countries. The Cypher Bereshit of Moses in the Jewish Bible, the Apocalypse, and the esoteric Gospels form the Christian Bible. The legend of Haram is the Bible of Freemasonry. The Odyssey, the Bible of the so-called polytheism of Greece. and the Aeneid, that of Rome, and lastly, the Hindu Vedas and the Muslim Quran are well known to all students of ancient theology. To anyone possessing the key, all these Bibles reveal the same doctrine, but this key, which can open esotericism, is lost by the sectarians of our Western creeds. It is therefore useless to seek for it any longer amongst them. I'm going to leave it there and do just a third reading until I just have one small little chapter. But that part is, my personal note. Fantastic description of what we already know. That these Bibles, these doctrines, these writings, teachings, all of them, basically all support the same idea, the same religion, put into a context that the local people could adhere to. And this is much easily seen in the ancient past compared to today, because today there is so much assimilation of peoples and melting pots, and it's you're living among people who have much more modern traditions of their ancient religions. So we have people arguing amongst belief systems when both of them are holding separate keys to the same story. And it's like they said, those keys to decipher those meanings have been lost. And we may be able to refine them, and I think in modern times we're starting to. But I also think that it's going to take a little more work than just picking up a Bible or a Quran and trying to translate what we assume it means. These had literal keys, literal translated keys. And these were put into the secret societies as well as the books. And it's like they said in the first part I read, that they were trying to preserve this knowledge, and they knew that it was going to be lost. They didn't want the people to lose this knowledge. It wasn't secret. It was never intended to be secret knowledge. However, it was kept secret from the average man who wouldn't understand it. So, I'm going to get to the next part. Namaste.